I'm speaking to you from the place where the tabernacle was established, the first capital of ancient Israel, Shiloh. This is the place where Joshua spoke to the children of Israel, where he divided the land, where he sent the 7 tribes that had not yet received their inheritance out to claim possession in the land, and he told them, "How long will you wait before coming to take possession of the land that the Lord God of your fathers has given you?" That challenge to settle the land, to build up the land of Israel, applies today as well. The children of Israel have returned home to the biblical heartland of Israel that Shiloh represents. But there are many people in the world who don't want us to be here. Specifically the Islamic threat of terrorism. The Islamic ideologues will do anything to stop Israel from re-establishing the biblical heartland of Israel, but we are determined to rebuild the land. We are determined to rebuild the biblical heartland of Israel. But as a result of that Islamic terrorism, there has been a lot of suffering. Families have been torn apart, children have lost their lives, parents have lost their lives, and there is a lot of suffering, a lot of trauma. 11 years ago, I was coming back from Jerusalem. I had my 3-year-old son buckled behind me in the baby seat. Suddenly there was a massive hail of bullets on the car. The car went completely dead. The bullets were flying. The terrorists were on the side of the road shooting with AK-47 assault rifles. I felt a bullet go into my left leg. Blood started coming out furiously. I quickly tried to start the car. The car was dead. It was coasting down a hill. The terrorists were still shooting. I turned the ignition. The car would not start. I shifted gears. The car would not start. Then I remembered I had my 3-year-old son sitting behind me. I turned around to him. My son's name is Rubin, or Ruby we call him. I said, "Ruby, are you okay?" His eyes were staring straight ahead, wide open. His mouth was wide open. I could see that he was trying to scream or to shout. No sounds were coming out. I didn't see any blood on him. I quickly tried to start the car. I drove the car as fast as I could. It had suddenly started as if it had never had a problem starting before. I drove as fast as I could to get up to the next community, up the road, which is called Ofra. I drove 170 kilometers an hour. Finally, I reached the community up the road. An ambulance came. The medics jumped out of the ambulance. They ran up to my car. A gas station attendant ripped off my shirt, wrapped it around my leg to stop the blood flow. And 2 of the paramedics tried to unbuckle my son from the baby seat. One of them started running to the ambulance shouting, "He's also been shot. He's been shot in the head." A bullet had gone into his head where the skull meets with the neck, causing a skull fracture and internal bleeding in the cerebellum. The bullet that went into his head and through his neck missed his brain stem by 1 millimeter. Well, we survived that day through God's miracles. The miracle that the bullet missed his brain stem, the fact that the car started when it seemed like it was dead, and many other miracles. But the point is that the challenge to our rebuilding of the land of Israel is there. The challenge to the children is there. And I was determined after what happened to us, after the operations and the fact that my son just barely survived, I was determined that I was going to help all children that have been traumatized from terrorism. And that's why I started the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund. to heal the trauma of the terror victim children, and to rebuild the biblical heartland of Israel through those children. So we established music therapy programs, art therapy programs, therapeutic horseback riding, snoozeland room therapy, movement therapy, and we built a nice big therapy center to serve the needs of these children, to heal the trauma and to rebuild. It says in the book of Genesis, chapter 49, verse 10, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a scholar from among his descendants until Shiloh comes, and his will be an assemblage of nations." Well, we know about the assemblage of nations because we see them here all the time, where we have people coming to visit us here from around the world, and of course the ingathering of the exiles, the reborn nation of Israel here in the land. Just on my street in Sjilo alone, we have people from 23 different nations who live here, who have moved here, who are raising their children here. That is the ingathering of the exiles. But I have to point out to you, there is this expression, this unusual expression, "until Shiloh comes." Well, we know that Shiloh was the first capital of ancient Israel. We know that this is the place where Joshua established the capital, where the tabernacle stood 369 years, where the woman Hannah came to pray for a son, and the son who was born from her prayers was Samuel the prophet. He grew up in Shiloh, and he was the one who would appoint the first two kings of Israel. Samuel the prophet appointed Saul and David, who would establish the unified capital in Jerusalem. Well, we are going through a similar period today. The whole world talks about the so-called Israeli-occupied West Bank, as if you can occupy illegally something that God gave to you. We have to remember that we are back in the biblical heartland of Israel. We've come back here. We've been called back here to resettle, to rebuild the land of Israel. The biblical heartland of Israel that Shiloh represents is the core. It says in the Talmud, which is a book that Jews around the world learn from, and it says, "To the resting place and to the inheritance." The resting place, that is Shiloh. The inheritance, that is Jerusalem. What that means is that first we need to rebuild the biblical heartland of Israel. Once we have rebuilt the biblical heartland of Israel that Shiloh represents, only then will we get to the point where God's kingdom will be established in Jerusalem in all of its glory. And that is why it is so important for us to support the people of Israel who live in the biblical heartland of Israel. And that is the importance and the meaning of the expression, "until Shiloh comes," because Shiloh means the Messiah, and obviously the Messiah is central in that process of return and rebuilding the land of Israel. By helping the children of Israel, you are helping the future of Israel, and we will get to the point where we will all, as it says in the book of Isaiah, we will all worship God's holy name on His mountain together. We could not do what we're doing if it wasn't for the support of Jews and Christians around the world who stand with us, who help us to do this. I can point out in particular the Shoresh Foundation in Holland that is standing with us to heal the lives, to heal the trauma, and to rebuild. So I thank you for your support.